Hello, hello. Thank you for being here today. We're going to be talking about beyond binary, how to build a gender expansive and inclusive tech industry. I think we often think about diversity and inclusion, and we certainly talk about it almost from a point of view of acceptance. Privilege gives people the flawed idea that inclusion is about accepting people into a space, in this case, the tech industry. But let's be clear that accepting someone for who they are is the very bare minimum. We need to go beyond that, and we need to talk about respect and support and affirmation so that people can truly thrive where they are. And today, I'm absolutely delighted to have AC Pizarro III, who is the executive director of TransTech Social. And we're going to be talking about a topic that is very dear to me, which is about supporting marginalized communities to economically thrive. If you're not familiar with TransTech Social, and I should say that faster, it was founded in 2014 by the media star and trailblazer Angelica Ross. She taught herself graphic design, photo editing, coding, and realized very quickly that technology was a catalyst for change in someone's life. So she created a foundation to secure financial security, and then reached out to communities around her to share those skill sets. Through TransTech Social, she was able to empower trans and non-conforming people through job training, leadership training, and workplace skill sets. And since 2017, they've been hosting a summit. And actually, I'm going to have EC talk about the summit that is happening next week. And EC has been part of a family, of a TransTech family since 2017. He is an award-winning brand designer and digital artist. He uses his talent and skill set to take company's brand and maximize both profit and success. And he's an innovative thinker and passionate about people and purpose, which is why I am delighted to have him today and have this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for having me.
Let's get started with something easy to just get our audience into this conversation. When I read the mission for TransTech, it really hit me that, talking about gender expansive, affirming, and sustainable tech, but going further, really talking about empowering financial security. Tell me more about the work that you do and why. I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? Why financial security is important, but tell me, especially for underrepresented group, why that matters so much.
Sure. At TransTech, our motto and mantra is employ, empower, and educate. So a lot of our community members, if not all, but most of them, are in survival mode. So financial security takes people out of the place of survival mode and into thriving members of our community. Personal story, I was laid off for a little while, and my motto when my friends would ask me to get to work and do things, I'm like, it's hard to do that when you're hungry. So when you're thinking about where your next meal is coming from, or if you have a place to sleep at night that's safe and secure, it's hard to have that financial security.
Absolutely. I think that's something that we forget, right? That too often we get to, well, why can you not do this? Why can you not do that to better yourself or get to the place where you want to be? And to your point, you can't do that when the very basic things that you need to survive are not there for you.
Exactly.
When we're talking about the TransTech, the community and the work that you are doing, if I think about the LGBTQIA community, oftentimes it is seen as one monolithic community. And that's clearly not the case. Why is it dangerous to think about it as one and the same?
I think it's dangerous to look at any community as
Very
monolith.
true.
There's billions of people in the world. You're not going to find any individual person that is exactly the same and requires the exact same things. So it's nearly impossible for businesses and corporations to give individualized support. So it's easier with DEI work for them to kind of paint it with this broad, broad stroke and just say, okay, this covers everything. But what we do at TransTech is that we censor the most marginalized. And under that philosophy, if you censor the most marginalized, and in our case, we censor Black trans women. And if you do that, your efforts become accessible and equitable for all because you're thinking about all of those different things. So when we're thinking about accessibility and equity from that lens, we're thinking about those that are formerly incarcerated. We are thinking about those that may have housing insecurity. We're thinking about those, like we said, underemployed. I hate unemployed. I think it's underemployed because, minimum wage isn't really a livable wage.
No, not at
So
all.
when you think about those things, that's why it's so dangerous. When I was working in corporate America, I was a part of the Pride ERG. And during this time, I was not out to my employer as trans. I had the privilege of being able to change all of my paperwork prior to entering into corporate America. And this was right around when marriage equality was big debate, and it had just passed on Capitol Hill. My job was right outside of DC. So of course the Pride ERG was so excited. And me, I was like, so what are we going to do next? Like, this is
Right.
this is the first step. We have this large building with our logo on it, and it's 20 some odd floors, but we don't have a single gender neutral bathroom. Like, can we get at least one gender neutral bathroom? And I was told that that was too political to have a bathroom that was gender neutral. And that's why it's dangerous to paint it under one stroke, because the people that I was associating with, they did not see the need for a gender neutral bathroom because they fit into the binary, and they were like, what do we need that for? So that's why it's dangerous, because you forget people. And when
Yeah.
you forget people and those people are further in the margins, you're not doing liberation for all.
I love what you said about, just what you just said is like, if you look at history, that's, been always the case, right?
Mhm.
Especially if you look at, for instance, the feminist movement, and how it was all about white women and not color
Exactly.
women. And, anyway, but I love what you said about catering to and supporting the most marginalized, because then everybody else will benefit from that because they have something more than this group has. I think if we thought more generally about this in life, we would be much further than we are,
Yes.
as human being, right?
Yes, exactly.
When you think about your work, obviously you rely on the support of tech leaders, right? You need to kind of convince tech leader first, to be more open-minded, to really think differently about what really inclusivity means. What are some of the kind of most common hurdles that you face when you go and look for support?
So TransTech is a grassroots organization. People see our founder, Angelica Ross, and assume that we are as big as HRC or GLAD or Out in Tech. I mean, those are great organizations, but we are a grassroots organization that is majority, it's 100% trans-led, majority volunteers, 2 staff. So when I stepped into leadership, we had about 800 members, just US based. Today,
Wow.
we are currently over 3,000 members across the globe. 80% of them are transgender and non-binary. So the struggle is the age of the organization and understanding our history and understanding that, yes, Angelica Ross is a media star, a pioneer, a trailblazer. But like we talked about earlier, understanding those intersectionalities. Uh, there wasn't a lot of people that bought into that trans people belonged in tech or that could
Yes.
even learn tech. So we've been able to grow really substantially. And we struggle with us being a niche market, and it's not necessarily viable and sustainable. a lot of cis leaders don't really value our purpose until it's time for the diversity to kind of save them. And that's the other side. But there's also a lot of tech leaders that understand that diversity means maximizing your profit.
Absolutely.
Everyone uses tech. The more minds and experiences that you have at the table, it makes it more accessible and more people to use your technology. So I think it's a little bit of both. I was actually surprised when I came in to see how many organizations that I hadn't heard of that wanted to do better. They knew they were missing the mark and they just needed the resources. And I think that's a lot of what I am seeing, is that people want to know, they just don't know where to go to make the change. And that's what TransTech is here for. This is the place to go where you can figure out where you're missing those holes and where you're missing those gaps so that you can truly support holistically.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the dollar sign, right? Because I think as I continue to talk about ESG more broadly, people see the dollar sign associated with sustainability because there's growth opportunity from a business perspective. But so many are still missing the point that you just made, that is, diversity brings better product, more inclusive product and services for your customers, a broader understanding of what is needed, and that dollar sign needs to come up more often. And I know that we probably all would want to see more diversity and inclusion because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But if we need to show the dollar sign for that to happen, so be it.
Yeah, we have to acknowledge that the society that we live in is a capitalistic one.
Correct.
I'm not saying that I am a capitalist, but that is the system that we have to work in. And I've learned that within my communications and networks, that's what hits home for them when they understand that they can make a better product because they have different experiences and different voices at the table, and it becomes more accessible, which means more people want to use it, more
Absolutely.
people want to pay.
Yep. As the mom, as you know, of a non-binary teen, it's clear to me that the generation, the Gen Zers generation, have a much more expansive way of thinking about gender. Yet, from a corporate world perspective, it is all still very binary, right? If you're looking at the job interviews, the applications, and the benefits, it's still there. And I think that when you're looking at some groups within corporate, so I take women as a good example, we are still so there's still so much bias, right? That is linked to gender, that I don't know that a lot of people are thinking beyond that. How are we going to get there? How do we get to think more broadly?
I think the younger generation is actually going to force people to think more broadly. Visibility. I don't ask the younger generation to fit into this gender binary, because the reality is the same way, like you said, the feminist movement started out where it was only for white cisgender women, right? And now we've seen that the women's movement has expanded to even include trans women, right? Across time, things have to change, because the one thing that's only constant is change. The corporate world will have to shift if they want to continue to grow and be profitable. So I say to all of those that have the privilege to be visible, and that have the access to be privileged, to be visible, and the support to be visible, to continue to be visible, because there are community there to support you. And if you want to enter into corporate will have to shift. I've been out of corporate for a little while, but with my 12 years experience in corporate, I can say that my experience with my prior to ERG and the conversations I'm having now are completely different from a standpoint of a ERG that I communicated with. They called themselves the Gender-Expansive Inclusion Council. And when I heard that, I was like, wow. And they had a Pride ERG one. So they understood the need for gender expansive individuals outside of a Pride ERG.
Right. Because that's the thing, right? It is looking outside that month or that moment in time to just tick the box and actually doing the work to continue to see progress. And that's what sometimes well, oftentimes you see missing. Sadly, and I say it with a heavy sigh, we have seen over the past year a lot of anti-trans legislation pass in several states, and that empowering a growth in hate speech against the community. How is this impacting your work, both in terms of support, but also in terms of maybe priorities and how you see that, you need to act more?
Well, in my work directly, I live in a state where I'm one of those states where several of those laws or bills are on the table. I live in Florida. So it doesn't impact my everyday life, but it impacts my community around me and also influences the work that I do. Because we are a global organization, it's not just the United States. We see that. We have had a member that is in Jamaica that reaches out to us for support, for reference letters so that they can be safe. We have members in Uganda. We have trans members across the globe. But honestly, transgender people saw this coming with marriage equality. Transgender people spoke up a lot during marriage equality saying this isn't enough. This is a start, but we have to keep going. And it seemed as though once marriage equality came, it was just kind of like, okay,
Everybody's happy.
that's enough.
Yeah.
And the reality is that most of the work that is being done and provided for the transgender community are organizations that are run by trans people. So allies need to come together and empower the work that trans people are doing to serve our community, because trans people know what other trans people need.
Yeah.
I love working at TransTech because it is all trans people. So there's certain things that we don't have to necessarily say, or anybody feel weird about saying like, hey, today's a shot day, my mood's a little off, or hey, today's just not a good day. And having that grace and being able to extend that grace to each other, understanding that we are all trans in this world and we all are seeing the 400 plus bills that are on the floor to come across and just really attack us. And it's time for everybody to come together and fight for trans people and fight for trans lives.
100%. This is like 1000%. And I love what you said about how, sometimes, and this is true for a lot of other things, as all the empathy that I can have for a trans person, someone whose skin color is different, I'm not that, right? And my husband always reminds me sometimes when we do things around, it's like, yep, still white. And it's true. I am, right? I am a white woman. I have privilege. I do live my life being able to do certain things that others cannot. And what you say about being in a community where you can be who you are and have people, not just that, but have people understand what you're going through, it's so critical. And there's, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but there is part of that empathy that comes from learning and being curious and, offering grace to others. That is a good start, right? That not everybody can have the welcoming space that you have where you are at TransTech, but with knowledge and curiosity and being open-minded and doing the work, you can start to create some of that.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's fair. I think a lot of people are scared to ask questions. A lot of people are afraid to confront that they don't know.
No.
A lot of people use the word ignorant and people take it as like, I'm not ignorant. I know. And it's like, we got to de-weaponize that word. Not knowing is just not knowing. But are you curious to know? And once you know, are you committed to doing better?
That's one of the things that struck me the most as I've been openly talking about my kid. And when I say, the pronouns, their pronouns are they, them, I usually get, oh, so you have two, or, are they twins? And I was like, no. And then I explain. And, oftentimes I get, I'm really sorry, but it's the first time I hear this. Can I ask you questions? So yeah, by all means, and that's what you want. You want people that admit that they don't know, but they're interested in learning and they're grateful for, for that opportunity that you offer them. I think that is harder in a work context than it is in a kind of just everyday context. But there's a lot that, in my opinion, that the company, whether it is HR or whatever group you have within that organization, can do to make that safe space happen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that companies can do. It's a loaded question just from a standpoint of the corporation that I worked at had a corporate equality index score that was very high. So my understanding at that time was like, oh, this is great. And then I did a few more researches. And since then, the corporate equality index has expanded immensely to include gender affirming care, because mine was like 10 years ago. But there are small things that corporations can do more than just putting your pronouns in your signatures, right? Having gender neutral bathrooms in your workplace, having your dress code not be gendered. If you have a dress code for how people come in, don't say men wear this, women wear that, because then where's the non-binary or gender non-conforming person going to fit? And they automatically feel as though they have to pick a side when you can just say, these are the items that are acceptable to wear at work. Because we know clothes aren't really gendered at all. Affirming healthcare, working to make sure with the insurance companies that you're providing affirming healthcare, because a lot of the healthcare conversation is centered around gender affirmation and gender affirming care, which it is for trans people. But there is underlining where people aren't talking about that cisgender people also get gender affirming care. When cisgender women, their estrogen is lower, going through menopause, they take things to keep them okay. And also with cisgender men, there are cisgender men who take hormones once they get a certain age because their testosterone is low. So understanding that they are currently attacking, transgender care, but they're attacking all care, because it's going to end up being where if you need that care, then you're going to be questioned if you're a part of said community. And then I would also say in corporations, you can normalize asking pronouns in spaces. Not just asking the person that you're not sure about their pronouns. Ask everyone. Because when you ask that one person, you other that person, you single out that person, then you don't ask anybody else their pronouns. I like to say, don't assume someone's pronouns.
Yes.
Don't assume them. Ask. Because if you don't assume, you put yourself in a position where you're not misgendering anybody and you're not offending anyone. And if you ask and they don't want to answer it, my philosophy, use the person's name. People have become so impersonal. Default, you can't misgender someone if you use their name.
That's right. And that's where, I get quite a few eye rolls when people see, especially on social media, when people see the pronouns. And I have, people that ask me, well, why do you do it if you're not, like, if, you were born a woman and you want to be identified as a woman, then you don't have to put your pronouns. And say, well, the way I think about it is that if I do it, I empower somebody to do it too, right? And to your point, you normalize it, and it's so second nature to kids to do it. And I see more and more with my kids' friend, it's just what they do, but I also see a lot of parents who are not necessarily supportive, and people starting at a young age to live two lives and starting in school to learn to cover, and that breaks my heart. And then you take that, you're talking about dress code. That is true about schools as well, right? Especially private schools where you have a uniform and it is a skirt for a girl and pants for a boy. Says who?
Yeah.
So there's a lot, and I appreciate that you don't even I don't have to ask the questions about practical advice, because you gave plenty. And I want to get then, because we're sadly already almost at time, but I have one question for you, because unfortunately, people measure success in diversity in tech, especially with, the report that you do once a year, where you see some percentages of groups, right? And how that has grown. Sadly, though, for trans community, the data is extremely sparse, and for good reasons, right? There's still a lot of people that don't come out openly because they're scared for their life, because they're concerned about the environment they're in. So how do you measure success then?
I mean, like you said, we can only work with the numbers that we're given. TransTech is a privilege. We're able to be visible and trailblazers in the industry. Like I said earlier, I wasn't out prior to taking this position. I lived a very stealth, low disclosure life. The number historically of marginalized groups has always been skewed when you have to pretend in order to survive. So within the community of TransTech, what we're building, we're hopeful that we can contribute to that conversation and measure success on a small scale through our membership. We have members that have gotten great jobs at senior web developers, at Q Digital, used to work at Power to Fly as a junior web developer. So we're able to measure our success through the connections and the resources that we provide our members and the success stories that we have. And we hope that the success stories that we share on our scale will show, like, on a small scale, this is what it looks like. Imagine on a larger scale what it really looks like. And like you said with pronouns, a lot of people assume that you can see a trans person, that you can recognize a trans person or a gender non-conforming person. And that's what I like about you putting up your pronouns, because it's saying you don't know. You don't know. You don't know. You know because you've assumed, or because you've given birth to a child and things like that. But if I was just regular Carolina on Twitter and you saw me, would you know if I'm cisgender or transgender or non-binary or gender non-conforming? So for TransTech, that's how we measure the success, because we can keep the safety of our members and the identity of our members sacred to the organization unless they want to share it. But we can measure that success and publish that for people to know.
I love that. And I also love, and I would like you to share more, that your summit is coming up next week. So how can people attend, what you offer? And then I already went and signed up to support you guys and, offer whatever skill you think that is useful. How can people support the organization?
Yes. So our TransTech Summit kicks off on International Trans Day of Visibility, which is March
Yay.
31st. We'll have a day of programming, opening remarks, panel around centering your joy. We know there's a lot of heavy things going on right now, but the one feedback that we get from our members is that they enjoy that they can come to TransTech and they can be. So I'm super excited. We'll be providing workshops and sessions across the entire weekend, all the way until Monday, across multiple tracks: media marketing and advertising, business and career, web app design and coding, social justice, racial justice, human rights, health, wellness, and technology, tech and Hollywood, and diversity, representation, and inclusion. So this summit
That's
doesn't
an amazing program.
yes, this summit does not just cover tech, it covers it all. We have trans presenters, people in our community, teaching our community. We were also able to stipend all of our speakers through a grant that we received from the Stonewall Foundation. Our founder, Angelica Ross, will be doing Road to Hollywood, from crew to actor. We have some traditional coding stuff, target anything with CSS, intro to inclusion design, type theory for software engineers, how investments in Black, trans, and queer communities save lives, building inclusive policies and benefits for gender diverse employees. I'm telling you, this summit is packed. So if you go to transtechsummit.com, did I add the summit is free?
I know. That is just amazing.
So when you talk about accessibility, TransTech is hitting the mark. We also have captions available in our custom app, and we also will have ASL interpreters there during every session. So when we say we want it to be all the way accessible, we are hitting the mark on that. So can't wait to see everybody there at the TransTech Summit next week.
Well, I'll certainly be there because I want to learn. There's so much I don't know, and then from there see where I can support you guys. Where can people find you? Because we don't, we have 30 minutes, but the conversation needs to continue. And so you're such an amazing person bringing your expertise and your joy for having an impact on people. So where can we find you?
You can find me on social media. My handle is ECAP3. So that's ECAPTHREE. Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. That's where I am. And I'm sometimes behind the TransTech Social handles as well. But to find me personally, that's where you can find me. And TransTech Social on all platforms. And our website is transtechsocial.org. Our membership is for everyone, not just trans people. So we're 80% trans. That means we have allies and in the community, cisgender, non-LGBT plus, all of that in the community. So I can't wait for the summit, and I want to finish this conversation and continue this conversation, Carolina. This was great.
Thank you so much. It was absolutely fantastic. I am really, really excited about the summit. I will be there, as I said, and I will cover it on social media to try and help and expand and get into as many people as we can with the great work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.